The Bible story today is about somebody, as I said, called Thomas. And it's entitled Thomas, Doubting and Believing. Now, Thomas was one of Jesus' disciples. If you remember, he chose 12 disciples to be his special friends to go around with him and help him in his work while he was here, while he was preaching, while he was healing the sick and doing all sorts of miracles. And Thomas was one of those 12 special people that he chose. Thomas was known to be a doubter. That means he didn't always believe. And sometimes he'd ask Jesus, even when he was still alive, Jesus, what does this mean? What's that? What's going to happen then? And he was always questioning. Now, that's not a bad thing, because if we don't know the answer, it's good to have a question. But the story that Thomas is most famous for, I think, is after Jesus had died. Now, Jesus had died and he'd been put in the tomb, and on Easter Sunday, on the third day, he rose again. He came alive again. And the first person to see him alive was Mary, one of the ladies who'd been following him. And she told the other disciples, and they realised that Jesus must have come alive because there was nobody there in the tomb. And so the word got around. And Jesus, if you remember, he'd walked to a place called Emmaus with two people, and they hadn't realised it was Jesus until they came to the place where they were to stay, and he blessed the food and they knew it was Jesus. But the disciples, they were, I think, a bit frightened, because if you remember, Jesus was their leader, and they'd come and they'd arrested him in the garden and taken him away, and he'd been crucified, and the disciples were a bit frightened that was going to happen to them. And they were together, because sometimes when we're frightened we need to be with our friends, and so they were all together in a room, except for one, and that was Thomas, and he wasn't with them. And when they were in the room, Jesus came. He didn't need to come through the door or through the window even. He just came. And the other disciples were so amazed, and they just didn't think that Jesus would come again to see them. Some of them had already realised that he was alive, but they didn't know what was going to happen, and they were, of course, so excited. And so they went to tell Thomas. Thomas, they said, we were together and we were just all together keeping each other company and being safe, and guess what? Jesus came. Ugh, said Thomas, I don't believe you. People don't come alive again. If I'm going to believe you, I'll have to see it for myself. And I want to put my fingers into his hands where those nails went. And I want to put my hand into the side where the sword pierced him, just so that I know it really is Jesus and not somebody who's making out to be Jesus. He doubted, didn't he? He didn't believe the disciples. He didn't believe what they'd said was true. He thought they'd perhaps seen a ghost or something. He didn't believe it was actually Jesus. But the Bible tells us that another day they were all together again. But this time Thomas was with them. And Jesus came. And he said to Thomas specially, Thomas, come and feel my hands. See the nails, scars that are there. Put your hand in my side and feel where the sword pierced me. And Thomas felt terrible. But Jesus didn't want him to feel terrible. He said, you're blessed. You know, it's you now believe. And Thomas did. And Thomas believed, and he told many other people that this Jesus that had been killed, was alive again. Now, perhaps that's hard for you to believe. People over the years, 2,000 years, have tried to prove that Jesus never came alive again. Some people have set out to write books about it, and the more they've looked into it, the more they've found that, yes, he he must have come alive again, because there's no other solution, there's no other answer, and there's so many things that show us that Jesus did come alive again. Those frightened disciples, if Jesus hadn't come alive again, they wouldn't have been brave enough to preach and to speak and be there ready to be thrown into jail if they knew it was a lie. And yet this is what happened after Jesus had gone back to heaven. They preached and they were thrown into prison, and a lot of them died because they just believed in Jesus, because he did rise again. And Easter's really about that. I know we have eggs and things and we all enjoy that, but Easter is about Jesus when he came and he died on the cross and then he rose again. And some people might not believe it, and some of us might be like Thomas and they're doubting, I don't believe it. But if you ask Jesus to show himself to you, if you ask Jesus to let you know that he's real, he will do. If you read his word, the Bible, and those stories, you will just see more and more how much Jesus has done for you and for me, and how wonderful he is. And let's think of that when we're thinking about this Easter time.